India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has reached Malé in Maldives. He is to attend the swearing-in ceremony of new President Ibrahim Mohamed Solih. This is Prime Minister Modi's first visit to the Maldives as a Prime Minister. And we have Vivek Karju, former India's ambassador to Afghanistan, joining us live from New Delhi. Mr. Karju, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us. We are getting these latest visuals as we speak of Prime Minister Modi touching down in Malé and meeting all the dignitaries. And this gains huge symbolism in the scheme of things.
It does. I think it is an assertion on India's part that the Maldives is important for India's strategic interests and that India has been very patient watching the situation in the Maldives, but that all countries, including China and perhaps especially China, should note that India will not take a challenge to its strategic interests in its own neighborhood lightly. I think the Prime Minister's visit is timely.
It's timely, and also we're looking at a situation where it's the Prime Minister of India who is there himself present for this swearing-in ceremony, whereas it's only a special envoy from China who is attending the ceremony.
No, the Chinese are trying to put up a brave face. They know that they have suffered a strategic loss. They were making an assertion in India's neighborhood, and the election result is a reverse. Now, what is important is that the people of the Maldives have given an indication that they realize that the Indian relationship is important and that they reject parties and leaders who try to taunt India. It was inexplicable to me why the former president had to go out of his way or to needle India. He was acting in a manner which was most unpresident-like. He was not acting soberly, and the people of Maldives gave him a thumbs down, and that is what is important. I think the Chinese and other powers should note that countries around India, the people of the countries around India, realize that India is an important neighbor, perhaps the most important neighbor, and therefore the link with India must continue. They don't appreciate their leaders who flaunt their own national interest to try to needle India.
But Mr. Karju, joining us for the special broadcast where we're bringing you live pictures from Maldives' capital, Malé. Prime Minister Modi has arrived for the swearing-in ceremony of the new president, the new Maldivian president, Ibrahim Mohamed Solih. And he's now seated right next to the former president, Mohammad Nasheed. And Mr. Karju, this is essentially signaling the end of the frosty ties, so to speak, between India and Maldives. Talk to us in terms of what would be, say, number 1, 2, 3 on India's checklist when it comes to resetting ties with Malé.
I think the first will be strategic ties. India has strategic linkages with the Maldives. There was a very robust defense relationship, and that relationship will have to be re-established because the former president had tried to whittle it down. The second would be to examine where India needs to come in on the economic and financial front to assist Maldives. I've seen reports which indicate that the Maldives economy and especially the Maldives finances are in poor shape. So they will look to India for some kind of succor, and India will have to respond. And the third is, which I think is important, is to allow the Maldives the freedom of action. After all, it is for the Maldives leadership to define its national interests as it perceives. Clearly, this leadership, which is being sworn in today, perceives that the India link is very, very significant for it. But space must be allowed to all our neighboring countries to evolve and develop as they want. So if they want some kind of an economic relationship with China, for instance, or with the other countries, some kind of a relationship in the tourism sector, we should not try to intervene in that process. Our aim and objective has to be to safeguard and promote our strategic and economic interests. And I do believe with the Maldives, we can evolve patterns of conduct which will both take care of Maldives' independent action as well as its interests and our interests. There's enough space to find the coincidence of interests here.
And that's what India should be looking to do, as you're telling us. But what about Maldives? Because things went down south because of, say, things like the way Indians wouldn't get work permits in Maldives and etc., just to point out a few basic issues. Do you think that with the installation of the new regime, Maldives should sort of extend its hand of friendship by resetting some of these wrongs?
Of course, Maldives will. As part of the process of reinvigorating ties, Maldives will undo the negative aspects which had been introduced by the former president. And in doing so, Maldives will take corrective action. I have no doubt about that. The Prime Minister's presence there indicates that enough groundwork would have been done by our diplomats in consultation with the incoming president, Mr. Soleh's team, to see how things will go forward henceforth.
Vivek Kachchu, former Indian diplomat, joining us on this special broadcast as we continue to get you the latest pictures, some of them live, some of them latest. This is from a short while ago when he hugged former Maldivian President Mohammad Nasheed. Prime Minister Modi is in Male. He is seated right next to Mohammad Nasheed as we speak, as we wait for the swearing-in ceremony of the new Maldivian President, Ibrahim Mohammad Solih, to begin. And Vivek Kachchu, former Indian diplomat, is joining us to help us understand what these symbolic images mean of Prime Minister Modi's presence over there. Mr. Kachchu, he has been to the Maldives before, but not as a Prime Minister. So in that sense, he is very sort of aware of the way the Maldivian government works, and that will only help in him sort of to re-establish ties with India as a country.
No, you're absolutely right. I think Maldives is the only country the Prime Minister has not visited during his term. He has in fact visited Pakistan too. As you know, he dropped in on Christmas Day in 2015 in Lahore to meet with Nawaz Sharif. So the only country was the Maldives, and he did so deliberately because the Maldives president was acting in a manner which, as I said, was one couldn't just understand what he was trying to do by needling India all the time. It's one thing to try to foster closer economic ties with China or with any other country. That is something that Maldives can decide, but to try to deliberately taunt India, and I'm using that word deliberate, advisedly and deliberately. The former president was taunting India. He was acting almost in a childish manner. So the Prime Minister did the right thing in signaling to him and to the Maldives people that that India doesn't appreciate this kind of behavior, and that it is for the Maldives people to decide if they think that their interests can be safeguarded by such a person. We know that the former president tried every trick in the book to remain there, but finally the Maldives institutions, including their Supreme Court, came out trumps, and he was shown the door. Now, the question is whether he will try games again. There, certain vigilance will have to be exercised both by the incoming government in the Maldives as well as by India.
Right, and the proceedings seem to have begun, Mr. Vivek Kachchu. The swearing-in ceremony of the new Maldivian president, the anthems are being played. Everybody is on their feet as the swearing-in ceremony of the new Maldivian president, Ibrahim Mohammad Solih, begins in Mole. We're bringing you live coverage with these pictures and sounds. Let's listen in. The Maldivian national anthem being played, ladies and gentlemen. The first of the ceremonies to make it official that it is indeed Ibrahim Mohamed Solih who is the new president of Maldives. Huge geopolitical significance at the swearing-in ceremony. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi attending the ceremony, the only country he hasn't visited in recent times. And it is seen as a reset or an amending of ties that have become uneasy over the last few years, to put it mildly. And with this induction of the new regime, India and Maldives are expected to go back to the way they've been dealing for many, many years as good allies. We have Vivek Kaju, former Indian diplomat, being with us here on this special broadcast. Mr. Vivek Kaju, I have to ask you one last thing. It is all about geopolitical advantage when it comes to any country's relationship with Maldives. That cannot be taken out of the picture. And in this case, with this installation of the new regime, India does go one up on China in one way or the other.
Look, I don't see the diplomatic and strategic game which is being played, which is played all the time between countries, and India and China are no different, as one up, one down. It is a case of assertion of one's interests, and India's strategic interests demand that there should be a certain understanding between India and the Maldives. China can develop, if it wants, as I said, relations in the tourism sector, etc. But there can't be a situation where the Maldives government, relying on China, seeks to undermine India's strategic interests by undermining or reducing the defense relationship. This is what the previous government was trying. And it was extremely sad that it was doing so, because it was harming its own interests. And the people of the Maldives rejected that kind of an approach.
Right.
So today, India is saying that geopolitics, and the Prime Minister's presence there is an eloquent testimony to this statement that India has these interests, and India will safeguard these interests, which are leaving space to the Maldives as a sovereign country to take its own decisions.
Mr. Kaju, as we speak, a new government and a new president is taking charge in Maldives, and he is taking charge with a lot of expectations on him and his government. You do not want a repeat of a situation like the one in Sri Lanka.
Look, in Sri Lanka, as I see it, their president too is acting unwisely. It is part of what he has done is part of Sri Lanka's domestic situation. India is watching it closely. But clearly, if the Sri Lankan president also feels that he can play games with India, or that Mr. Rajapaksa feels that he can play games with India, that is wrong. India has, as it showed in the Maldives and is showing in Sri Lanka, would not like to intervene or interrupt in any manner their domestic processes. India would like to hope that governments in Sri Lanka will act in accordance with its own constitution, as India expected in the Maldives, that the Maldives democratic process will be respected by all parties in Maldives. So that is the situation in Sri Lanka. It's best to be very watchful at this time and try and to urge all parties to show wisdom and restraint to resolve what is their domestic situation.
Right. This being discussed as we continue to bring you live visuals from Maldivian capital Male, where the swearing-in ceremony of the new president Ibrahim Mohamed Solih is underway. The national anthem has been sung, the prayers have been made, and now the proceedings have officially begun. Prime Minister Modi, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in attendance. Huge significance, huge symbolism when it comes to the bilateral relations between India and Maldives. China sending a special envoy to this swearing-in ceremony. And Solih is being sworn in as the 6th president of the island nation. Including India, the big significance is that it's no less than the Prime Minister of India who is here and is signaling the end of sour ties between the two countries. The relations between India and Maldives are all set for a reset with the installation of this new regime and the new president, Ibrahim Mohammed Solih.